So I will call the meeting to order here at 12:15. That's what my watch says. And given that we don't have Marie Levinson, who couldn't be here today, and given that Karen Sherman, who's been a member, is not here and has let me know that she will be resigning. She's been on the committee a very long time.
Yeah.
And her life is such, it's not good for her to continue. So she will be resigning. Therefore, for today, Meredith, who is an alternate, will be serving as a regular member. And even though that makes us all Democrats, it would be an issue if Meredith was a permanent member, but it's not an issue when it's an alternate who has to step up to fill it's a very interesting wrinkle in the minority representation rule.
Groton is full of wrinkles.
Well, it's not Groton, it's state. These are all state rules about these things. So for today, our members present are Billings and Pierce and Lucan and Key. So we have a quorum. We're a 5-member body. We need 3 for a quorum, and we actually have 4. So we're good to go that way. And our first item of business is approving our minutes. And let me just make sure I have.
Is the roll call, I can't remember. I was telling her my home is like living in the receiving room at Goodwill. Okay. Kitchen, 2 bathrooms, being.
He's purging.
Yeah. So this is not even come out yet. Yeah.
So did you have a question, Scott?
Yeah. Is that correct, what I have?
The roll call from the last meeting?
Yes.
I believe we had myself and Levinson and Pierce and Dukins. I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Yep. And it should actually list absence, the other member, who was Sherman. So that's a change to the minutes there, Tabitha. That is correct. So I will take a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was September 15th, 2021. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so good. We have Scott and Dukins, and with a first and a second, we'll make Dukins is the first.
Yeah.
Scott the second. Okay, got that. Okay, good. And even though you weren't here, Meredith, it's up to you. You can vote to approve the minutes, even though you weren't here.
Okay.
If you prefer to abstain, you can, because we have enough to approve the minutes.
Well, I did Zoom.
You did Zoom? Okay, good, wonderful. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention? Okay, minutes approved unanimously. Good. Some people think if they weren't at a meeting that they can't or shouldn't vote to approve the minutes. But that's not really true, as long as you're comfortable with the minutes with the people. Yeah, you can absolutely vote to approve minutes, even if you weren't there. Okay, then we have public communications, citizen participation. I don't believe anyone has reached out to us. No one is calling in on our Zoom.
At the bottom here.
This is sort of freaky that we get to see ourselves.
I know, right?
Here while we're.
Yeah. We're the only ones on.
Really? That's good to know, right? We're the only ones watching ourselves. Okay, good. Okay, and given that there is no communication, we'll move right on to staff reports. And Meredith, you met Tabitha Harkin, got that, and Lauren Post is the
Economic development
assistant, so, and she's often the one who'll send the emails and the minutes, so when you get an email from Lauren Post.
Right. Yeah, Lauren is just me essentially, taking care of all the meeting stuff.
Works with
So that's helpful. So staff report, first thing order of business is greatergroton.com. So are you all familiar with this site? Have you looked at it yet?
I looked at it once when it first went up, I think.
Okay, well, we're really excited about it, so we're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. There are a number of projects on there. Actually, I'm gonna just bring it up to show you guys.
Great.
So we have the
I may
screen.
have been on it. So I thought the site changed a bit.
And I think I just did an age-friendly page for, I've been working with Mary Jo over at the Senior Center. And it came out really good and she really liked it. So, you know, you get to the page, it says, got something to say, here you are. So we have all the projects. We have a Parking in Mystic project. We have
Can you
a,
hear Marge?
oh,
Okay, good.
we have a Beautified Groton project, which is also a committee. Just a general suggestion box. What the facts? So if I've heard this thing, it's crazy. Is that true or not? And we can vet it with actual staff versus Facebook.
So the site is
greatergroton.com.
Okay.
Small business forum. So this is the age-friendly page that I made for Mary Jo. So if you look at this,
That applies to all of us here in the meeting, this age-friendly page. I was just gonna say,
I'm not there
it's
yet.
for us.
so, you know, it just tells them what we're doing for age-friendly Groton. We're designated an age-friendly community, which is really exciting. It has a survey, a long-form survey, a short-form survey, and a map where you can put your ideas for age-friendly things like benches, for example, or lighting. And it's just a good way to get people giving positive feedback. So I wanted to bring it up to all of you so that you had a chance to look at it.
I think
And
it's great.
if you'd like to do a page around some kind of community development issue, I'd be happy to do that. So,
That housing thing where we loan them money to repair, I forget which category that was.
so housing rehab.
Yeah, I would think that would be a good one. Yeah,
Yeah, actually that would, because we could get the word out better on that.
exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Good suggestion, Scott. And so you know what, you'll learn more about this. But part of what the department does and part of what we oversee is a program where people of lower incomes,
Right.
they need to make a renovation on their house, they need a new roof or a new furnace, they can't afford it. They can get a loan from the
Yeah,
town,
no cost,
no interest.
interest.
And do what they need to do, and
Good.
down the road, that loan gets paid back at some point.
Right.
If they sell their house or something.
Oh, okay, that's how it
Yeah.
remunerated, okay.
Have you gotten any additional help on that? Remember last meeting, you were kind of backlogged because of the lack of
Yeah.
assistance.
I have an update on that, but I don't want to jump ahead, because you know, you got to
Yeah.
keep the agenda. I'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah.
So this is great. So if
Yeah.
anyone has any other suggestions as you go home, think about it, you visit the site, you know, let Tabitha know.
Yes, please do.
Well, New London sends out program stuff like the senior center used to have all those tours. And since the COVID, all of that seems to have died down and kind of dribbled away, but I think it's starting to come back. And I wondered if the senior center has anything like that going on there.
A tour?
Yeah, we used to go, let's see, we went to West Point for the graduation of the ceremony. We went to
Oh, like a trip.
Manhattan for Radio City Center. We went to, whether it's the Senior Center or not, but Tanglewood for Boston and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can ask Mary Jo.
was very vibrant for the first 3 or 4 years that I moved back here.
Yes, the senior center had a lot of trips like that.
Yeah,
And generates a lot of money coming in too.
well,
It
it was-
probably breaks even. I'm not sure it
pretty much
breaks
break even, and a lot of times we had to merge with other communities, like later, or I think, remember one time it was like 5 stops to fill the bus.
But you're probably right, Scott, that with COVID, they probably had to shut all that down.
Yeah,
And now with it spiking again,
but,
I doubt they're gonna be able to do it.
yeah, New London had quite a listing, I don't know if they pulled any of them off, but I was wondering, of the senior center, this would fit in nicely with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we should put some of that information.
To there,
out
yeah.
If they're
'Cause
doing things.
You didn't have to be a member of the center, you could just be a resident, and the age factor was not a problem either.
Sure. Okay. Great.
If anyone has ideas after the meeting, shoot me that. I'll wait a little while and I can build that out really easily.
Mhm.
And we should all go home and play with it.
It's an
Yeah.
all register
Or
thing too,
even-
and tell your friends, because
Yeah.
we really want folks to know this is out there. Facebook is not the only way to communicate
Right.
and
That's
find out
good.
about town projects.
That's
Well,
really good.
the regular Groton spot on the web was already way ahead of a lot of them too, because that interactive map that I worked with on, where I went around and took pictures of all of the parks and their facilities, and then your office or your predecessor put them into the program.
Oh, yeah.
And so you bring up a map of Groton and there's a thing there and you hit on that and up come the pictures.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's a fantastic thing. I think. Hundreds of pictures.
And soon this is being advertised, so to speak, on channel 2
Yes,
when they do
We're
their
trying to-
announcements.
push it out as far as we can. We actually had cards made, so we're gonna do this direct mailer
Mhm.
to like 13,000 households, I think. Send it home to kids. Want to do those yard signs, maybe with QR codes. So we're really trying to push it out.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so on our agenda, that was the first thing, greatergroton.com, she was telling us about. Now we'll hear about our ARP funding.
Art
You both
funding.
know what the ARP stands for, what this is referring to?
I'm not off the top of my head.
Okay,
So it's an American Rescue Plan, so this is coronavirus
Hmm.
recovery money, that's been given to every town and city in the country. A lot of the cities are already spending this money. We are doing a needs assessment to reach out to the community and find out what everyone wants to see, how they'd like to see us spend the money. John Burke has been in conversations as well as the long-term recovery committee, and we're working very closely with the long-term recovery committee. I was actually just interviewed to hire an ARPA coordinator position, so we will likely be hiring them pretty soon. And they'll be in charge of the grants administration and day-to-day reporting. How that money is allocated is still being worked out with the committee.
And how much money has Groton received to date?
To date, we have, so the total funding award is 8.6 million. However, it's coming in 2 tranches, they're saying, so we've already been given 4.3 million. And then we'll get the other half later,
To date, 4.2,
4.3.
4.3, so $4 million we have to do good things for the community in some way, COVID related.
Yeah.
And then there'll be another 4.3 coming. Okay.
Right. So we have, might as well just show you this then, the ARPA page on greatergroton.com. Oops, where is it?
And that's one that I went to when this first went up, Tabitha, because it was saying you could give input on how the money should be spent.
Yeah,
And at least at that time, I was not able to navigate it in a way that let me offer suggestions. Maybe that has been improved, but I'll try it again.
Let me just look at it while you're here. I don't know why it's not coming up. Oh, here it is.
So this is the federal money that we
Right.
hear about all the time.
Yes, other townships.
Congress approved.
Yeah.
So we have a poll that a lot of people have taken. I think we've had something like 200 and, like, actually it says right here, 243 votes on this so far. So we're polling people on the categories of spending and what they'd like to see towards that category. And just also getting blue sky ideas from them on their spending ideas. So we have this blue sky idea page. So we have ideas like upgrade town buildings, library needs outdoor reading area. I don't know what a natatorium is. Does anyone know what a natatorium?
It's an indoor swimming pool.
A lot of people want an indoor swimming pool.
It's a campus pool, yeah, so I think it would be a pool maybe with other things.
Usually it's adjacent to a high school,
Right.
but it's open to public and high school students.
Sure.
So this is great because we have, like, we've collected another 30 ideas on this. So I'm taking every idea we hear and I'm entering it into a spreadsheet and saying how many votes we've had on it, keeping track of our priorities for spending. But we haven't been able to meet with the long-term recovery committee since the election stuff kind of threw a wrench in everything. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be meeting again in January.
So who was polled? Who was polled for the input?
Oh, it's still open. You can go now.
But is it anybody?
Anybody.
Just a citizen of Groton town can?
Yes.
Oh, that's.
And this website asks you, are you a citizen? Do you work here? Do you live here? So we can collect
perfect.
that information.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So again, we should all go to it. And put in
Yeah,
our
or
input
get other people to take some interest.
and try, and if you have trouble navigating it, let's have it to know.
Yeah.
I ran into some trouble the first time, but it looks to me like it's working.
We're working out the bugs. Yeah, sure. It's a new thing.
Understand, totally understand. Yeah.
So yeah, ARPA's, there's a lot of moving parts in that. Pretty soon I'm going to take my little task of ARPA coordinator, giving somebody else. Really look forward to. But there will be a formal grant application process. So if anybody asks me, there's a formal grant application process coming up. We have not released it yet. So we can take your idea, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to get money.
Yeah.
And there are rules. I mean, the federal government has some criteria. You can spend it on these sorts of things, and you can't spend it on these sorts of things, right? It's,
Number one rule is it has to be really close. If you want a swimming pool, you can kind of say, well, it's recreation is increased because of it, but you really have to think about how it relates to recovery.
right. And it can be that the town would have pots of money to help small businesses, for instance, restaurants.
That's an idea.
That suffered so much.
Yeah.
Still,
That's
right?
definitely an idea that's on the table.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's clear corona.
What about, excuse me, what about, individuals that don't have insurance? Should they get COVID? Would that
Health insurance?
cover that?
If they had their vaccination.
Could we create a pot of money?
Yeah, it would
If
have to
someone
be a
had
health
medical
agency.
bills,
Yeah.
if someone had medical bills they couldn't pay, is that's what you're suggesting, Marge?
Yes.
Yes.
And here again, I know in my house, we're all fully vaccinated. I've had my booster, the two boys, they've had their 2 shots, but they haven't had their booster yet. And here again, we have COVID in the house. But that being said, we all have insurance. But I do know people that are suffering horribly from medical bills. Because insurance doesn't cover everything.
That's one I haven't heard yet, and I've heard a lot of ideas at this point, so I'll definitely put it on the list. It would have to be a health agency, like I just said. They would have to
Right.
apply.
Like legislator, something you can apply through they would know whether you've had COVID or not.
Right, Ledgelight,
Ledgelight.
DNA.
But like did get money early on, they got emergency funding, so it did give them some money already. But, that's a good idea.
There's, what's the, community, there's a sort of community clinic in Groton, 184. You should be able to know that it's a health provider, the community clinic.
Yeah, it's right near Mr. Crab, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, CD,
Community,
I know what you're
something
talking
like
about.
that,
That's the building.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So an organization like that who's providing the care, but they're getting people come to them who don't have insurance,
Exactly.
struggling to pay the bills, give them a pot of money that they could cover the costs, because they're going to be hurting being asked to provide services and not getting paid.
Exactly.
I do have a little problem with that if they haven't had the vaccination. If they refuse the vaccination,
That could be a stipulation.
Yeah.
at least some sort of a penalty, you know, instead of 100%, maybe 50% or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think you can discriminate from one person to the next.
Right, and you'd want some compassionate care, so even people who didn't make a smart choice. Yeah, and that would be for some other committee to figure that sort of
figure
stuff
that
out.
out,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's okay.
We don't have to figure that out today,
Yeah.
but that's a good idea, Marge, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's another thing we can visit through greatergroton.com. Great. And you're hiring the
ARPA coordinator.
coordinator.
Yeah.
ARPA.
So that's a part-time, well, not part-time, it's a full-time, 2-year position, so it's a temporary position, because the funding's only around for a couple of years.
Is there a time that this money has to be spent in?
Yeah, it needs to be spent by 2026.
Okay.
I think it needs to be allocated by 2024 and then fully spent by 2026.
Okay. Well, if you have leftovers, I'll give you my address.
Get in line, sister, get in line.
Okay, anything else on ARPA?
No, let's have any questions.
Any other questions or suggestions from anyone? Oh, okay, so we can move on to the 2019, and this is the CDBG, which stands for Community Development Block Grant. Okay, so you'll hear that used a lot, CDBG. And it's also called a small cities. I believe Groton qualifies as a small city. Okay. Norwich, New London, some others are
They're
larger.
entitlement communities.
So they get more money and they can do more things that we don't get to do with CDBG money.
New London's larger than that?
It's not actually larger, but
They're big considered entitlement community, I think, because of the
Because
demographic.
of the demographics, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I'd say it's about half the size of that,
it's not larger,
Yeah.
but it qualifies for this other.
physically as well as population.
Okay, so
Okay.
where are, we might just want to kind of give Meredith a very brief overview of this whole CDBG thing, so she knows.
It's okay with you, and then bundle those two items, the
Yeah.
housing rehab, and
Of
we're gonna
course,
have two,
Yeah.
they're overlapping.
sure.
So the CDBG Small Cities Grant is a very large grant, it's generally around 1.5 million. Yeah, that's what we've been generally averaging to, renovate public housing. So, the 2019 grant was to renovate the Mystic River Homes congregate care facility. And we are just wrapping that up, hopefully by the end of the year, with a miscellaneous. So we've done all the big stuff, and now it's down to the miscellaneous items like the carpeting, some fencing, they're moving the beauty shop around inside. So that all got bundled into one bid to wrap up the project. And Andy Woodstock is our consultant. You'll probably hear about him a lot, Andy. Who actually just had surgery, you guys.
Oh, did he?
On his knees. Like,
Oh.
he was really out of commission. So, we're not meeting in the month of December. But like I said, we should be wrapping that project up pretty soon. How it relates to housing rehab is our housing rehabilitation program is separate from CDBG. It is also federally funded, and it is also it's very confusing with CDBG stuff, so I'm not going to overwhelm you. But our housing rehab program, we have a surplus of money because people have given us a lot of checks this year for housing prices being the way they are, people sold their homes.
Right.
And so I got like 6 checks, and all of a sudden I'm sitting on almost $250,000.
Of people who's paying back those loans.
Okay.
That we get them, that's the checks of people paying back.
They
the
pay
loans.
back the loan. So that, it's a revolving fund.
I've got it, yeah.
But the revolving fund has to be put down to 35,000 in order for us to apply for another big grant, because that's the way the federal people pay.
The housing rehab one has to be spent down in
Yeah.
order to apply
That's what the
for
regs
the,
say.
for the senior, the.
Yes. Well, we want to apply for Groton Garden. We didn't apply last year.
Exactly.
So we're talking about the next round of CDBG for Groton Garden, because they need a lot of work. But like I said, we have a surplus. So I went to the last meeting and said, I've got all these applications and I'm drowning in it. I can't do it fast enough because it's federal requirements. It takes, it's like you have to send something to so-and-so and then
Can only
they'll
imagine.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But Peter Testa is my consultant on that side, and he's helping me with getting those spent down. So right now, I think we have 4 applications that he's processing, which is great.
Yeah.
So
And each one of those applications would require about 35,000.
yes, each one, the top grant award, loan amount is 35,000.
So if you did 4 of them, so that'd be about 140.
Right, so we've been to meet our mark. So I said, how are we gonna solve this? I talked to Peter about it. He goes, call Miguel. Miguel is the Department of Housing boss. So I called Miguel and he said that we can use some of that money to match the big grant ask. So what we're gonna do is we have to rewrite they call it a program income reuse plan. We have to rewrite this document saying this is what we're gonna put the money towards. Have council approve it.
Right.
And then we can apply next year. And so we're carving off 100,000 as a match, and then the rest is spent down.
Great.
So it's been a little bit like, because that like keeps me up at night thinking, well, we're not gonna be able to apply for Russell Gardens again. We didn't apply last year. So I think we're gonna be able to apply.
If we do that, just so we all understand, does that mean going forward, the amount of money we have for housing rehab will always be smaller?
No.
No.
So, well, we're gonna try to keep it down just by spending it on projects. But
Right, but if you
this
take
is a one-time carve out. This is like a one-time carve out of that. And then the rest will still be small
right,
for housing rehab.
right.
Where did the money come from for that Pequot renovation that was in the paper?
Pequot Village,
Pequot Village.
that was a previous CDBG, but it's also the Groton Housing Authority.
Yeah.
Okay, the
Yeah.
Groton Housing Authority, so in Groton, there's this thing called the Groton Housing Authority.
Right.
I
Okay.
told you.
Learning.
They operate Pequot Village, which is down Quantic Road.
Right, I know where that is.
And Grassel Gardens near the library.
Right.
Both low-income senior housing or moderate to low income. And for the disabled living on relatively low incomes, okay? They are also able to apply, Scott, for some funding where Groton Utilities, for instance,
Yeah.
can do what's called a tax credit.
Mhm.
And instead of paying some taxes to the state,
Mhm.
Groton Utilities can give that money to an agency doing low-income housing.
Yeah.
So Groton Housing Authority got some money through that program
Mhm.
for some of the work they've done
Yeah,
at Pequot Village. So it's a
Yeah.
mixture.
I wish I'd gone to that open house.
Well,
Very interesting.
we'll talk about doing it again in the spring, when as soon as COVID goes down again.
Yeah.
Because Meredith, I'm sure, would love to see
Yeah.
I missed out on that too.
Yeah.
We should do it on the future.
Mm.
when COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but okay, all right, so you have a plan.
We have a plan.
The
Yeah.
hope, the plan is then that in the beginning of the year, we'd be able to apply for another $1.5 million to help the Groton Housing Authority do some renovations at Grassland Gardens, which, believe me, really, really need it. When you see them. Okay, yeah. The difference between the old, not yet renovated, and the new renovated is
Mhm. Yeah.
pretty dramatic.
Okay.
So, okay, good, that's encouraging news.
One last thing is, on housing rehab, we do intend to seek, because everyone has to apply for ARPA funding, even town departments, we do intend to seek ARPA funding for our housing rehab program that would not have all of the strings attached that the program we have now has. If it was just direct money, then we could just give it out much quicker. Then, because right now it's federal money and requires too much paperwork.
And you'd still operate that as a loan kind of thing, where you give the money, but people would pay it back, is that
Yeah,
the
that's,
thinking?
we prefer that.
Yeah.
model.
Yeah. I think that makes sense to me. ARPA. But so you understood that, they hope to use some of the
Yes.
ARPA money to be able to help some people do those renovations without having to jump through all the
Yeah.
federal hoops.
Kind of like the same principle when I know my grandmother, we tried to get her into a nursing home, a really good one. We had to liquidate a lot of her money that she had put aside just for her burial even. She could only have, this is in Texas, a minimum amount of money
Oh, yeah.
in her coffers. And so we bought a TV and a recliner. That was the only way we could get her qualified for the program, to get her into this facility. Rather than be able to hold that money for her funeral or whatever, which she had saved for, we had to liquidate it because government required it. It wasn't the state, it was the government. So yes, I do kind of understand.
Yeah, in that case, the nursing homes and the state, if you're going in under Title 19 type of thing, they do allow you to prepay your funeral expenses.
At least here in Connecticut, we don't know about
In
Texas.
Connecticut, yeah.
It's a different country.
It's a different country.
Yeah.
Nope, okay. Any other questions about the housing rehab program or the small cities, CDBG, big, or anything else you want to tell us? No? Marge, any other questions, thoughts?
No, just one little thing. I had never known of anybody to use the rehabilitation money.
Mm-hmm.
And then just recently, my last aunt passed away, and my cousin had told me that he had to repay the town because he got a loan from the town. So I said, oh, I know all about that. I said, but now it hit home. One of my family members used it in Ledger.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea it existed even until I started with the committee.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Now you know.
that's the kind of thing we learn here, huh? That's why,
Yeah.
that's one of the
That's
things.
why this thing is going to be very good, that new website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what's fun and exciting about serving on this little committee, just that you start to learn about some things going on in town that you had no
Yeah, you
idea.
never know.
Programs that help people. That's
Mm.
great. That's what we're all about, right?
Amen.
Mhm. Okay, good. Thank you, Marge.
You're welcome.
Okay, then the last on the agenda was the age-friendly Groton, but you already talked about that.
Sorry, I jumped around.
Okay, that's okay. Unfinished business, I don't think we have any unfinished.
Yeah. I made a query to Tabitha about the Spice of House in the future situation. Did you find anything on that?
I just found kind of a roadblock, honestly, Scott.
Like
That
I did when I was
nobody
on
knows
Parks and Rec.
anything or has any desires to do anything yet. And,
Yeah,
I think just back pocketed, I think, for now.
Yeah.
Keep-
but it's going to be available to do something with if they move their Parks and Rec over to the new community center that used to be Fitz Junior. So that's why I was thinking, when I was on Parks and Rec, I asked them if they had any ideas. And they don't bother with that.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean, kicking the can down the road there.
Just for merit, so Spicer House is a big, old, beautiful house that the town owns over in Noe on a lovely setting, and it's, right now, it's the location for our Parks and Recreation Department. They
Okay.
operate out of that building. And there's been some talk, some planning of moving them over into what was Fitch Middle School, we now call it Community Center.
Right.
And if that happens, then the question would be, what can we do, what should we do with this big, beautiful house on this amazing property right on the water?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really quite something. But there are questions about the deed,
Yeah,
when it was deeded to the town, there were
What
maybe
can be done.
restrictions in the deed about what can be done with it. So Scott was just asking.
and my question was whether it could be used for emergency, like your house burns down and we got to put you somewhere, instead of putting you into a motel, maybe make arrangements for an apartment in these, 2 or 3 apartments in this building, or that type of thing, emergency need, housing need.
Has anyone actually looked at the deed?
I'm
Mhm.
sure that I feel like there was conversation about this back when I was on the town council 10, 20 years ago.
Oh,
Not
You're
about
too
that
young for that.
specific use.
Yeah,
I know,
right.
really. There was conversation about the deed and the deed limitations
Yeah.
at Spicer House.
Definite.
I
limitations.
can't remember the
Yeah.
details of what I heard.
Yeah.
But
Well, I can easily look at the deed.
okay, take a look at the deed.
Okay.
And then the covenants when it was given to the town. Because what comes up with many of these properties is that it's been,
Yeah,
it's
you
given
can't do this,
that
but you
it
can
can be
do
used
that.
for public benefit or or it can be used for, open space or it can be
Right.
used for recreation.
Yeah,
So yes, that would be the thing to look at.
Yeah, that's
What are the covenants, restrictions on the,
Yeah.
yeah.
because it's too nice a place to just go to rot and ruin
Oh,
because nobody
no.
wants to do anything about it.
Yeah, yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
And you haven't heard, there's not a timeline at this point for when they would be moving Parks and Rec. Yeah, that's just that's an
Parks and Rec.
idea.
I mean, I don't even know if it's. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I've heard that there's a lot of issues with that building.
Of course, yes, that's why it was.
They might
Probably
school.
asbestos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
bit of asbestos.
Well, I don't know where they would go and.
They were going to take over the office. We did a tour of the building when we first got it. And it's up on, I think it's on the second floor or something rather. It was a big, it was the office before. And they were looking at also the auditorium. Because there were some groups of drama groups that wanted to have a place where they could do that.
Right.
So
I know that was the concept.
those 2 things were the things that were and it was in the part that hadn't been renovated yet. because now everything's over in what used to be the gymnasium and those other parts, the cafeteria.
The annex.
Yeah. So it's in down the future, definitely, but plan for the future.
Yes, because they would have to
Yeah,
spend millions of dollars, I
Right.
think, to upgrade, renovate, and improve the building
yeah,
and make it usable.
And I
maybe
think they're
part
trying to
of
get
that.
some ARPA money for that.
Yeah,
I think it's all the air quality qualifies.
yeah,
Yep, yep. But someday, if you're driving around knowing,
Yes, I'm gonna go look.
go there and, yep, put in Spicer House.
Okay.
it's a tricky little turn. It's before you turn to go over the railroad bridge. It's the first one coming from Mystic on your left, right by the cemetery.
Okay.
And it's a dead end. You go in, you've got to come out that way, which
And
is
it's
a bit
look at it.
horrendous.
and it's very challenging because it's an old building. And
Yeah.
a home, it's beautiful, but the town every year in the budget asks for money to improve the
Yeah.
air conditioning, to do painting, repair rotted wood.
Yeah.
Right.
Some years it gets approved, some years it doesn't, so the building has challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not
Plus the
terribly cost
location.
effective to use it as a town building, but,
Yeah.
but it's beautiful.
It's there and it's been deeded to us.
Yeah,
the
and
Property, yeah.
The property, I mean, it's
And-
just gorgeous to walk around on the property.
Like Ender's
It's
Island
not quite as gorgeous as
Yeah.
Ender's, but it's.
on that.
Yeah. That
yeah,
whole area
smaller
has been
scale.
gentrified. And one of the things that came up when we were talking about it was whether or not the community would accept this, that, or the other thing. I was considering a safe house, or,
Mm.
you know, battered women or battered men or whatever. And they said, no, I don't think we can do that in this neighborhood.
No, I heard that, right.
Knowing-
Yeah.
knowing
I know
where-
Ender's
Yeah.
Island had up with the same with the AA,
Yeah,
ended away with AA meeting.
yeah, drug or rehab, forget that.
Yeah, yeah,
Nimby.
right?
Yeah,
Okay, so that was, is there any other unfinished business, Scott, that you can,
not
or
that I
Marge,
remember.
that you can think of? No,
That I can think of.
me neither. So then our new business, we have two things. We need to elect our officers for the coming year. And that's a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. I've been operating as chair. I'm happy to continue to do so if the group wants me to, and happy to step down.
Absolutely.
You're stuck with it.
Well, somebody want to make that motion?
I move.
I second.
Okay, been moved and seconded that Natalie Billing be chair, moved, seconded, moved, Scott, second, Meredith. Are there any other nominations for chair? Anybody else jumping up and down to chair the group? Okay, all those in favor of Natalie, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. Then we need someone willing to be the vice chair, basically would run the meeting in the event that I'm not able to be here, would run the meeting with Tabitha's assistance, as you see I do, so. And we don't have, we could nominate someone who's not here today, like, like Marie.
Yeah.
She would- But, Mark, Mark, Meredith, or Scott, would any of you be willing to be vice chair? We'll start with, I realize that's something to ask of a friend.
I don't think
I'm
I
not
have
even sure
enough
that all
Yeah.
the
information to do this.
Yeah. Marge, would you be willing to accept vice chair?
She's fine.
I would.
Thank you,
Good.
Marge.
Nominated.
So Scott nominates Marge. I second that nomination. Scott first, Natalie seconds it. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. All those in favor of Marge Gookins as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously. And then secretary, dear Scott here has been our secretary. Scott, are you willing to continue as secretary?
Sure.
Yes, wonderful. I'll nominate Scott for secretary.
I guess I second.
Meredith seconds. And are there any other nominations for secretary? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously. While we're on this, let me announce, because Karen Sherman is resigning, Karen was the one non-Democrat on the committee. Obviously, party means nothing here, right? This is not partisan, there's nothing partisan happening. It's just the state law that says any committee like this must have some minority representation from the not majority party. Since the Democrats happen to be the majority party at the moment, we need to find a Republican or an unaffiliated. Any voter who is not affiliated with a
Good
party.
change.
You could. Well, let's see. So, before you change for that reason, let's see. But that is an interesting option. We have Meredith as a Democrat who's willing, could be appointed, but can't be a regular until we have and I've also
vote Democrat.
exactly. I've also recruited. It would mean you can't vote in primaries, like when there's a presidential primary. So you have to, as long as you're willing to give that sort of thing up, that's up to you. But there is another woman that I've spoken to about applying to be an alternate. Her name's Dana Semeraro. She's also she's on beautification. Yeah, she's lovely. She's lovely. And she has applied, and I assume will be appointed as an alternate. But again, she can't move into that regular slot unless Scott changes parties. So the first word is just, if you know anyone else, if you need anyone who would be interested in experiencing this, learning a little about the town, helping the town, who happens to be a Republican or an unaffiliated, speak to them, invite them. If we don't find someone and you're willing to do that, we may take you up on that offer at the beginning of the year. Okay.
And it doesn't change the way I vote.
Exactly.
92, who knows whether I'll be here for the next election.
Oh, well, you look like you're. Yeah, really, you'll be here.
I was born 1930.
Holy cow.
I told him he doesn't look it at all. I would never have guessed.
Doesn't look it, active, you just don't act your age there.
I got this picture in the attic that's going really bad.
Okay, so we have our officers. We have Marie. Dana will presumably be joining us, and then we have that one regular seat. But until that regular seat is filled at each meeting, the alternates can serve.
Right.
So the last thing is approving our meeting schedule for next year. We've had a little confusion this year with the December date. Now, you have a couple, you know what we do? Oh, we do.
I would have been there.
On the back page of your agenda, Marge, the back page of your agenda, you see the date?
March 16th, June 15th, September 21st, December 7th.
Yep.
Ooh,
So everybody,
Labor Day.
what?
December 7th for Labor Day.
Well, Harvard Day, okay, that's.
Yes.
So the December date normally would have been the second Wednesday, or like these others, the middle, but I asked them to bump it up to the first Wednesday, because last year, that's what we did here. We said, oh, we'd rather meet early in December, not quite so close to the holidays.
Right.
And somehow there was just a snafu that didn't get entered into the official record. That's what caused the confusion for us, where we on the committee all said, oh, we changed that date, but it wasn't reflected, no big deal. But this year, we got it on paper, so there won't be a mix-up, hopefully. Do these dates look okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Fun to me. We try to avoid meeting in the middle of the summer because people are doing all sorts of things, and we try not to be too close to the holidays. This also allows us, by March, you'll know whether you've applied for the CDBG.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of why we used to meet like January, April, but in January, they do, you know, sometimes they didn't know if they were or weren't applying.
Right.
So that's part of why we shifted the schedules.
Mhm.
12 o'clock noon, does this noon time hour still work for everybody?
Yeah.
Wednesday, good for everybody?
Sure.
Great.
Yeah.
All right,
So
so,
by the 16th, you'll know whether I have to change
correct.
D to I.
And let's see, so I just need a motion to approve the schedule.
So moved.
Who wants to second that?
I'll second it.
Meredith seconds. Any other discussion on the schedule? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, we have our schedule for next year. Great, unanimously. Excellent. And that is it for today. And see, this is what we try to do. Keep it to a 1 hour meeting, not longer.
Very informative.
Exactly. Informative, kind of fun, friendly, which helps the town, and you get to learn some stuff about the town. Marge, thank you for calling in.
No problem. Thank you for calling me.
And how old is your grandson who had the exposure?
He's 27.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have my two oldest grandsons living with me,
Gotcha.
7 and 29.
Gotcha.
And he got a job at Mohegan Sun back in September, which is an awesome job
Yep,
with awesome benefits.
yep,
And, but he's in the public.
yes.
And even though he's had his shots and wears his mask, he still got it.
He tested positive. Wow.
It's
Yep, it is
Scary.
happening. There are
Yeah.
breakthrough cases.
very scary, but I'll tell you what, they're very good to him.
Yep,
They've given him, 10 days off.
yep. And he's not terribly sick, I assume.
No,
Right.
no,
That's,
but he is asthmatic, so he's going back on his inhaler.
yeah.
So it is very scary for me.
Yes, yes. But that's at least a good thing with the vaccines and boosters. If you could get it, mostly people aren't getting too terribly sick. But yes, if you have an underlying breathing or lung issue.
Yeah, we were just talking about the two of them going to get their boosters,
Yep.
and here we are stuck in the house for 10
Oh,
days.
so he got it before he had his booster.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
has
that
a
booster.
Pfizer shot with both shots.
Yep, yep, yep.
Have you had your booster, March?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good, 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 good. Well, we will be thinking of you. May your test come back negative. May you stay
I am
healthy.
telling you.
Absolutely. And be well, everyone, and thank you all.
you.
We'll
Happy
see you.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all.
Yeah,
Happy holidays.
we'll see you all
You too.